Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the cost of living and how it's appearing on either the number one or number two issue for pretty much everyone, or all polls certainly that I've seen. And some of the questions in some of the polls that I've seen are deliberately designed to sort of lower the temperature on cost of living and to up the temperature on things like global warming. So clearly they're being stacked and juiced to produce an outcome that the globalists want. But let's just have a look at a few things. Cost of living generally is seen all across the Western world as a primary concern. Job security is reduced, purchasing power of the paycheck is reduced. There's all the fallout from the forced lockdowns, supply chain issues, and so on. Again, all forced. None of it's organic. Not one bit of this is organic, nor is any of the wealth transfer that's gone from the workers, if you like, to large property portfolio shareholders and or holders of property and large equity share market shareholders. So those are the two classes that have been, particularly enriched. But the overall wealth of society actually hasn't increased on a per capita basis. What's happened is that the wealth has moved around within the society so that workers have less. Workers are getting 10 to 12% less of the national income pie, and that entire amount of wealth has gone to, as I say, the property holders and shareholders. And then there's another hive off the other side where manufacturing jobs, for example, have been sent offshore to China and India and the like. So there's been a lot of wealth reduction for the workers in the West, and the globalists have orchestrated and done the whole thing so that to build up the Chinese and Indian economies and so on, and of course to increase the wealth of the what are called the elites and the CEOs. I mean, to give you some idea as well, in this is wealth transfers. The CEO of, say, a large retail chain in 1970 was paid, around 5 times what the shop floor guy, the guy with the broom sweeping the floor. So it's about 5 times as much. Now, there was a lot of benefits thrown in, like a chauffeur-driven car and a vacation home over the summer and that sort of thing. So those were benefits rather than cash. But the income disparity was quite small back in the day. Now, today, in that exact same company, the CEO is paid almost 150 times what the guy on the floor is. In fact, more than that if you throw in things like so-called performance bonuses. But they're so fast and loose with performance bonuses that if one criteria doesn't work in order to trigger a nice big fat bonus, they'll just invent another criteria to justify the bonus. So that gives you an idea as to the difference that where the elites are now, the pay they're getting and the income they're getting, and how they can just arbitrarily increase their pay. But it just gives an indication as to how big the wealth transfer is, and the size of it, the magnitude of it. But let's have a look at other things. I've been doing some hard crunching of numbers, and I'll use Sydney in Australia as an example here, but I think it would apply to any big city across the Western world. It could be sort of LA, New York, or London, or big Canadian city, I don't know, Vancouver or something. So just having a look at this, 31%. This is 31% of all, I'm using advertised jobs here as the indicator. So I guess there's some rubber in there, but 31% of advertised jobs pay less than is needed to have a minimal lifestyle in Sydney. So if we take, say, a 1-bedroom apartment in a middle to lower middle range suburb, probably a lower middle range suburb actually on this, and you look at the rent on that, then you look at sort of buying food. Let's assume no car. Let's assume no children or anything like that. Let's just assume the beer, real basic existence. You don't have an annual vacation. You can't afford to go out and have a beer with your friends. Even having a cup of coffee at the cafe is something you'd have to think about. So if you're even just to break even or come anywhere near it each week, you would need, a certain income. And I won't mention income in as much as it won't have relevance to, say, British and American and Canadian listeners. But if you had that income, then or less, then so the cutoff point to even surviving day to day on a minimal lifestyle. Again, this is no car, no children, no annual vacation. You're waiting for the specials to come on at the end of season sales at Walmart or Kmart or something. Otherwise, you won't be able to clothe yourself. You designer label clothes, no chance. So 31% of people are living that sort of subsistence lifestyle. Now, the reality is they can't afford to live on their own, or even again a small compact one-bedroom apartment. They can't afford to do that. And the closer you get to things like transport facilities, major bus interchange or rail stations, that sort of thing, then the price of the rent and so on moves up. You wouldn't have a snowball's chance of affording a mortgage. So now, if we look at moving up the categories here, say 60%. So about 60% of the population are making the average wage or less. So now that would allow them, they couldn't really afford much more in rent. They could probably run a motor vehicle. They could probably afford a pretty basic annual vacation, and they maybe could go out once a week for a few beers with their buddies and that sort of thing. So that's what the average wage gets. You're still very marginally above subsistence, and you still would be relying on free healthcare or government supplied, nationalised healthcare. You couldn't afford to pay any of that yourself. If you got ill or sick and you didn't go into the super urgent list, there's no way you could afford a medical procedure paying for it yourself. So you may lose your job due to your compromised health, but that would be too bad. If you didn't have relatives to move in with or something like that, you'd be fucked. That's how harsh it is out there these days, even on an average wage. So the amount of people, like say 210, even if you're looking at, say, double subsistence wage, you're still looking at it wouldn't be easy. You could have a better apartment, you could run a car, but you wouldn't be doing well. You'd still be living. Maybe there'd be one or two paychecks between where you are now and hitting the wall. But if you want to have get ahead sort of money where you can afford mortgages and rent in a nice area, run a nice motor vehicle and so on, you're looking at just under 1%, or maybe say 0.75%. Now, if you have a large inheritance or a decent inheritance, then the amount of people that could afford a true middle-class lifestyle will be about 10% of the workforce based on these numbers. But that'd be it. As soon as you get outside that 10%, unless you're inheriting pretty much a whole house, and one that doesn't need major renovation and remodeling, then you won't be able to live a middle-class lifestyle. That's how tough it is right now. Now, I just want you to compare this. Say, let's be generous and say 10% of workers could afford a meal. And that'll be a household thing where the top 5% of income earners, and you've got, people in there who have married each other. People within that group are staying and getting married and maybe thinking about having children. But as soon as you drop out of that group, then they've got no chance other than a large inheritance or winning the lottery or something like that. So that's how tough it is. Now, compare this to in 1970, where over 70% of wages could afford what then was considered a middle-class lifestyle, that being a modest 3-bedroom house, 2.5 children, dependent children, a dependent wife, maybe works a bit of part-time, but nothing serious, more as a hobby than as an income, and you've got a basic sort of car, and you've got a driving vacation once a year, maybe twice a year, and so that 70% can afford a middle class lifestyle 50 years ago. Today, from their wages, today it's 5% can afford it as individuals, and maybe 10% as a household. On household income. That's how much it's changed. I mean, that is a radical fucking change, no matter how you look at it. But yet, can you find any government around the world that is talking about it seriously, in the Western world, talking about it seriously and doing something about it? Now, a lot of it, maybe not every bit of it, but a lot of it is fixable. For example, mass migration and bringing in, allowing all the rich people of India and China and elsewhere to come and buy property in the West. You can't buy property in their countries if you want to do it. You just can't do it, or they'll let you own 50% of the property, but you can't sell it. Once you want to go, you can't sell it for more than you paid for it. These are a lot of strict controls on property ownership, but somehow in the West, all these people can come in and buy property, and there are Chinese property investments that are buying 200, 300, 400, 500 properties each. In Australia, think what they're doing in the United States. You look at Manhattan and places like half of Manhattan is owned by Chinese investors. So this has had a very, obviously a material effect on big banks and big finance are buying up tens of thousands of properties, and of course that's squeezing out all the buyers, all the local buyers, all the mums and dads who want to buy a house and start a family, that sort of thing. They're all being squeezed out. So because of these policies of allowing all the rich in the world to come and use Western real estate as a money laundering playground, that's had a huge effect, allowing the big banks and these people to have huge holdings in real estate. A lot of it lying empty, by the way. They're not renting all that stuff. A lot of it lying empty, so it artificially forces up the price of houses and artificially forces up the price of rent, which they in turn benefit from. They're orchestrating the very system that they directly benefit from. It's a bit like starting a pandemic and offering a remedy for it, isn't it? Anyway, so these are just that alone. Then the cost of sending middle class jobs offshore means that only they were being replaced by lower paid service jobs, which are less secure. So the gig economy, the list goes on of things. Now, because of that, there's been a big wealth transfer away from the workers, and that's showing up in cost of living relativity. So the cost of rental, compared to, again, we've used 1970 as the benchmark. The cost of rental, it's gone up by 3 times faster than the rate of wage increases. So that is the difference. That's a colossal difference. But Western governments are not doing anything about it. It's part of the Great Reset. And if you look at the way Schwab and the World Economic Forum and the World Government Forum, all these guys talk, it's what they want. They're heading in this direction. They're creating the very problem they intend to use as justification for screwing the Western populace even further. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.